I've been working on this mech for many years, and it's finally starting to work the way I want. But it don't look too good, because what is the point of making a cool looking mech if it doesn't actually work? First you make it, and then you make it good. Now, it's time to start on that second half. I'm gonna be tearing it down to the frame and rebuilding it to look nice and be safe for the public to pilot. So let's go! And here we're gonna open up the front panel to show you what we're going to be cutting. Several of these voltage converters are not needed because they're 12 volt to 5 volt USB, and I'll just be using some AC adapters connected to the uninterrupted power supply for that. And that's mostly just for these RCA to HDMI adapters for the camera system. There are also some relays to switch between cameras, and we'll be salvaging those to use in the new cockpit. We'll also be salvaging these fuse boxes because safety is important. I had a fire once in the mech and don't want to repeat that experience, even though I just had to blow it out like a birthday cake. Now we'll just remove a lot of this wiring connecting the various bits together. Get that last voltage converter off there. Then this power relay. Now we remove the camera switching relay, which switches the side monitors between the head and shoulder cameras simultaneously, and also connects the monitors to a computer HDMI output when the mech isn't attached to an extension cord. You know, pretty much letting you know when you're on internal battery power. We'll be removing more wire harnesses, including the barrel plugs for the cameras. And lastly, those fuse boxes, which are just standard automotive fuse boxes. For ease of access, we'll also be removing this codpiece. You can see there's a lot of give on the front mounting panel, so it is a good thing we're going to be rebuilding this thing entirely. Inside the cockpit, it's pretty janky, so you can see why this mech isn't safe for the public to pilot. But hey, at least it kind of worked. Now, unfortunately, I don't have enough room to record the extraction process, so I'll just record each piece as I set it aside after removing it. First, we got some standard USB controllers that I use to control the mech, mostly the arms and the drivetrain. Next, we got a standard Raspberry Pi 4, which is the brains of the output and holds my custom Python code. This is the main console. We'll be salvaging some of the hardware from these 3D printed bits, mostly these car backup cam monitors that monitor the mech's undercarriage, and the emergency stop buttons that cut off power to the mech's limbs. And all these toggle buttons for various accessories. We'll be using a smaller DSi touchscreen, so we won't need this big USB touchscreen, nor do we need the small World Ball LCD. These relays connect the battery indicators to the batteries when the mech is on. These are needed because otherwise the battery indicators would run even though the mech is off, and they would slowly drain the batteries. We got a rat's nest of power adapters, which we won't really need. Maybe some of these RCA to HDMI adapters, of course. This is a Walmart uninterrupted power supply used to power the computer. I tried having the computer powered off the batteries, but because of the current the motors would pull, there would be occasional brownouts, making the computer briefly shut off and restart. And we'll just quickly remove this front panel. You see, Marduk used to be entered from the front, however I wanted to be a little experimental. Alright, now this is actually the back of the mech and the rear hatch where you can go inside. You just flip this up, and then flip the seat down, and then you can hop on in, close the seat up, and pilot the mech. However, this is actually pretty hard to get into. Now we'll move on to extracting more circuits, but because everything is so snug in there, I didn't get any footage of the extraction process. There we go, all free. This Arduino would do digital outputs and analog inputs to control the mech's limbs and sense their position. There was something weird going on where it couldn't control more than a few motors at a time. Probably because the Arduino couldn't provide the current necessary to power all the relays. This is a PCA 9685 Raspberry Pi servo hat. This controls up to 16 hobby servos using only 4 Raspberry Pi pins, and we use small servos to control the speed of the motor controllers. We'll still be using these for the upgraded version of the mech. This is a 40-pin connector to connect the mech's leg circuits to the Arduino controller, a very useful bit of kit. Now this is an ARM motor control unit. I was trying to keep things organized with the little drawers, but unfortunately it was more of a hindrance than a help because of all the little wires getting pinched. Now we're gonna move on to taking apart the torso enough so it can be easily removed. We'll remove this baseball cannon. And then the entire left shoulder joint unit. Next, undo the bolts on this handle that also hold on the metal side panel. You can see the structure underneath is pretty janky. Some of this PVC dates back to 2018. The chest frame dates to about 2017 when I had planned for mech to be a large Skeletronics suit. And the wood panel with the fan on it is from around 2020. All these pieces make it kind of like the Mecha of Theseus. And in that spirit, we'll be throwing most of it away, but we'll repurpose as many parts as we can. Now we'll undo the bolts that hold on the left chest side panel. Remove the center hatch panel. Then remove the entire right arm. Alright, now you can see that despite the arm size, it's actually pretty light, probably about 30 or 40 pounds. So it's actually pretty easy to move around and do maintenance. I'll just set it aside for now. This is a mech shoulder joint. You can see that I was using winches for that, and that the winch spool has slipped out of its fitting. That's because the bracket here bent from all the pressure. More heavy-duty winches have more support on the top to keep this sort of thing from happening, but that would get in the way of making an actual rotating mech joint. But I've already got an idea for a better mech shoulder joint, so we won't be reusing these and just take off the entire right shoulder unit as well. Here we go. One nice and neat back panel. It's still in pretty good shape, so we'll probably be able to reuse this. It might be a little too narrow to actually fit on the back of the new cockpit, but that's something we can adjust. Alrighty, here we've got the mech's main power console. You know, it's got a key to activate power to just about everything and various switches to give power to, you know, like cameras and stuff. Of course, we'll also be trying to reuse this in the new cockpit. Now, this is a maintenance port for the mech. Now, that's just fancy talk for a USB hub and HDMI switcher connected to the Raspberry Pi computer and encased in Tupperware. On the end, we got two HDMI cables, one input and one output, and the USB-A. All these are wrapped up in a cable protector just to keep them, from getting pinched and stuff. Next we'll remove this other side panel. And then we'll remove the right chest panel.
I bet you didn't know the mech had a roof, did ya? A nice flat waterproof one too with a hatch. Well, not anymore. Well, with this sheer amount of wood, we might be able to reuse it for some purpose or another. There's some wiring for the different types of lights. And around back, you can see what is known in the business as critter debris, aka some cheeky mouse was making a nest in the mech. It's a good thing I didn't take the keys in, otherwise I'd have mice going on a joyride with my mech. Well, the mech's torso is just about stripped down, and you can see the frame is quite heavy. Truth be told, the mech's old PVC frame isn't actually attached to the base. It's just resting on the metal frame with a few PVC bits and metal woven in between each other. Because I was really just trying to make the minimum viable mech.
And now we'll start removing the remains of the PVC shell.
Well, that made it easy. And here is the old cockpit frame extracted. Kinda dark, but it has served me well these many years.
So now we'll just tuck it out of the way.
So we've got ourselves our walking leg base here. Now what I might do is actually make the base more narrow, because I originally actually widened the base from the old Billy Buck days. So that way this metal frame was wide enough to fit Marduk's old footwell. That will be actually quite easy. You can see in the frame where I spliced it together to make it longer. So we'll be making the width right here, this middle part here, as wide as this right there. That way the base will be fully square.
And here is the culprit of that critter debris in the mech's roof. Looks a wee bit confused, don't he? I would be too if my house suddenly vanished. But don't worry, he's now living in the old cockpit chair that I have set aside. But that is all for this video. Next in the series, we're going to be starting the construction of a more durable, safe, and aesthetically pleasing cockpit block. Sounds like you got something to look forward to. Like, subscribe, and remember, if the women don't find you handsome, they should at least find you handy. Take care.